Thank you so much, Naples. Before I tell you about proper channel, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and how we came up with this idea. I've done a lot of different things in my life, and every single time I noticed it was the process itself, not the work, that slowed me down the most. Perfect example, when I was applying to graduate schools, it averaged about 12 hours of research just to figure out how to apply to each one of the different schools. When I started a sports league in Tallahassee, it took us about 2 months to figure out how to rent field space from the Parks and Rec department. When I was teaching scuba diving, the diving was the easiest part. The worst part was figuring out the bureaucracy of certifications, of insurance, of continuing education credits. The thing that upsets me the most about bureaucracy is every single one of us has to go through it individually. Why in the world do we have to have 1,000 people suffer, and in no way does that suffering help educate the people who want to do it in the future? Perfect example, I bet all of us have 2 things in common right now. I bet we all have driver's licenses, I bet we all have terrible DMV stories. This is insane. Why in the world do we have to suffer and reinvent the wheel every single time? Proper Channels fix that. We came up with a web application that makes it easy to capture and share your institutional knowledge so that you no longer have to reinvent the wheel. But before we talk about Proper Channel, let's talk a little bit more about bureaucracy. The first major problem of bureaucracy is knowledge loss. Look, everyone in your organization today will eventually not be in your organization. Some of them much sooner than you think, and some of them at a much more expensive cost to replace them. Look, it's time we stop reacting to this problem when it happens, and it's time we start planning for it before it happens. The second major problem is inefficiency. So we're all so busy today, we don't have adequate resources, specifically time, to be able to properly document what we did that day. So that means when someone else in your organization needs to do that same task, they have to start all over because there's nothing for them to learn from. So our organizations are sort of like Sisyphus, where you have to keep on solving that same problem over and over and over again. And when you're stuck solving a problem, which you can't see right over there, but when you're stuck solving that same problem, you never have time to make it better. When your hands are full, you don't have time to pick up and solve other problems. What we're talking about is knowledge transfer. And when you have a lack of documentation, you have a lack of quality training. Right now in organizations, roughly 80% of all training is what's known as informal knowledge transfer. That's a fancy way of saying you ask a question and your neighbor tells you what they think the answer is. In elementary school, we called that a game, and we called it something else, the telephone game. That's right, organizations, the vast majority of their training is done using the telephone game. Now we understand why we don't, our employees can't do basic tasks. It's like, why is that so hard? It's so easy. Well, because they were told 15 different ways how to do it, and none of them were the right way. To scale knowledge transfer, our research exposed 3 major barriers. First, it needs to be incredibly simple and easy and open to everyone to document their work. It can't just be one department or one person. It needs to be everyone, and everyone needs to have access to it. The second is people need to be able to find information incredibly quickly, because it's really fast to just interrupt and ask your neighbor. So you need to be faster than that. And finally, it needs to be incredibly user-friendly for almost the same reason. Let's see it in action. This is Proper Channel. This is a real customer's travel request and reimbursement process. And right away, it's very approachable. Big, pretty, bright shapes make it feel approachable. You approach it with confidence. Confident people make less mistakes, and they procrastinate less. But here's the big problem with flowcharts. This is terrible for training. This doesn't tell you anything. You need to already be intimately familiar with this process for it to make any sense. What we've done is we've embedded the training in the flowchart itself. Here's your rich media enabled instruction telling you exactly how to accomplish just that one task, not information overload. You can put in videos, screenshots, whatever you need to train that person on that one specific task. Then we go one step further. Why not connect you to the actual resource and the actual tool to get the job done? No more guessing, no more pulling it out of an email from 3 years ago and driving your HR person crazy because they told you at least 30 times that's the wrong form. With Proper Channel, we tell you exactly what to do. We give you rich media-enabled instruction to make sure you're doing exactly the right way. Then we even link you to your tools and your resources to make sure you do that process incredibly efficiently and incredibly correctly. if I told you what to do, I gave you detailed instruction and told you how to do it, and I even gave you resources, what couldn't you do? It would be easy, it would be child's play. And this is what we mean when we say ease of use. This is Nikolai, he's 6 years old. He was building proper channel guides with 5 minutes of training. Proper channel simultaneously discovers, documents, and distributes your institutional knowledge so everyone in your team can do a better job. But better still, every guide is a living document. So even though we can make it incredibly easy to get through a process if it has a lot of twists and turns, why have twists and turns at all? This is that holy grail that people have been talking about for literally the past half century, continuous process improvement. Every time your employees do a process using proper channel, they're empowered to make it a little bit better. This is as is, that would be your left, and, well, that's a whole lot of fun. It's 2 steps on the left. That was after only 1 week of improvement. That's impact, that's savings. Talking about impact, a nonprofit, their volunteer coordinator was spending roughly 80% of her day answering the same 3 questions over and over and over again. She made guides, and that 80% dropped to 20% of her day. Imagine how much it would be worth to you if you didn't have to answer the same question over and over and over again every single day. A manufacturer in Tallahassee was about to spend $10,000 plus on developing a custom IT solution to solve their order duplication problem. An entry-level employee found a manual workaround for free because we introduced them to proper channel. When you empower your people to solve their problems, it affects your bottom line. Proper Channel is looking for validation. We're looking for 10 organizations with 20 employees or more to fully implement and give us our data so that we don't have single institutions that are telling about a single problem, but we have big data and say, oh my gosh, this made a huge difference for our organization. I'm William McCluskey, and I'm looking forward to hearing your questions.
Great presentation. Does anybody have any questions for this gentleman? Who's one of Tallahassee's finest entrepreneurs? Mind us.
I fully take that title. Thank you very much.
I don't know that I need that, but thank you. Great concept. Do you bring it to the government?
Absolutely.
Because, and I'll tell you why. Right now, my father-in-law is in New Jersey. He just died, and now I'm going through. I mean,
End of life is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be a wonderful application, because now you have attorneys. Now you have.
You touch just about every government organization that exists.
It's crazy. In New Jersey, in order for her, the title of the car, just that process in and of itself, to get her name on the title so that she could legally own the car, okay, you got to go to the surrogate court first. From the surrogate court.
Well, they tell you have to go to the surrogate court first.
Exactly. So I'm going through that process right now. This is a wonderful application. So if you could bring that, if you could bring that to New Jersey, please do.
Every government organization absolutely needs it. The biggest problem is they actually need proper channel to buy proper channel. They don't know how to do RFPs. They don't know how to do proposals. They don't know how to do purchase orders. They don't know where their purchasing authority ends and begins. And that's why we have such a hard time. All of us have called a government agency and asked them a direct question, and some of us have gotten the wrong information. Some of us have had fingers pointed to other agencies, and then they just both point to each other. And a lot of times they'll just flat out refuse to answer. It's not our job to instruct you in our process. Yes, it is. That is literally why we pay you. That's why you exist, is to have us get through this, not to prevent us from getting through it. And one of the interesting things we find is the government employees are suffering more than we are, because they also don't know exactly how to do it, and they're getting beat up 40 times a day. We're only feeling it individually. But again, you nailed it right on the head. It's all of these things. How many people have died in America? We're talking billions upon billions. Why in the world did each one of us have to suffer through this thing? So yeah, we're trying to fix it. If you got it in, hook me up.
How difficult would this be to embed it to enterprise software products and kind of establish a channel that way?
Incredibly fast and easy. So that picture of Nikolai, that's real. He really was making his own guides in about 5 minutes. And he was just giggling and absolutely giddy because like he could share the things that he had just learned in pre-K with all of his other friends. And that's the thing that we really see is people love being able, we're social animals. We love being able to help other people. And so this whole idea that, oh, people are hoarding information, our research shows the exact opposite. All those people who you think are hoarding information, I promise you they've trained at least 3 other people. And now they're grumpy because those 3 other people, they don't do it every day or they're not in the company anymore. But usually the implementation process is a couple of weekly meetings, just train them what the tool is, and then a couple of behavior changes. It's when you have a question, the default answer is have you checked proper channel. And if they have checked it and it's not on there, that's a great time to make the guide. Because you answer that question that one time and then you never have to answer it again.
Question?
Yeah, it's a great concept. How would you manage the ecosystem if some of the knowledge is sensitive or information, intellectual property?
So perfectly great question. And that was almost like a page to set it up. Everything on Proper Channel is, so when you have a private environment, you control both viewership and authorship. So there are some processes that are legislated. You cannot do it another way, even if you know a better way to do it. No, by contract, we have to do it this way. So you lock that one down. Same thing with the guides themselves. Sometimes we can't even let other people see it, especially in mergers and acquisitions and things along those lines. That's very privileged information, so only a certain group of people are allowed to even see it. Okay, we'll just make that one not visible except to this group. And so we have all sorts of permissions and controls to make it as easy as possible to make sure that information doesn't go to the wrong person. On top of that, security-wise, this, even though it feels so familiar, is pretty much all custom code. So that means there's no such thing as a internal espionage where someone goes in there and downloads everything and then they open it up in their environment. You can't download. You can't print. Everything that is your institutional knowledge will stay in your institution forever.
Wow. So is there anything the community could do for you?
Absolutely. If you know business owners who are trying to do things better, please introduce me. We really want to have other people saying, oh my gosh, Proper Channel did this for my company. It's one thing for me to show it to you and me to hype it to you, but when other customers say, I saw a 200% increase in my profit margin, I was able to open an extra branch 2 years faster, that's when other people really start listening.
Well, thank you very much.